Hi there, Atheist Blind Chick. I always enjoy watching your videos because I think you make some really good points and you always put them across really well. And in one of your recent posts, the one I could never be a believer, I was quite intrigued by your description of how you perceive the difference between belief and knowledge. And you made me think about it for a while, which is obviously one of the really great things about these posts and the debates that they generate on YouTube. So what I thought I'd do is I thought I'd post a response with a slightly different perspective from yours, even though I think we're probably coming from the same general direction. So first off, I think that I took the meaning of Jesus Freak 777's question pretty much at face value when he used the word believer. So, in order to clarify that a bit, what I did was I went back to my dictionary so that I could set some real clear terms of reference for this post. So, here we go. My Oxford English Dictionary says that believe means to accept as true, or as speaking truth, or conveying truth, to think or to suppose. And it says that know means to have in one's mind or memory, so that's obviously you know your name, you know that you're alive, or to feel certain about something. So my interpretation of this is that the difference between these two words is quite subtle, and what it really boils down to is the level of certainty that you hold for certain ideas. Now, I think that one of the dangers that you can get into if you start playing word games like this is that if you're not careful, you can generate so much smoke that it just distracts you from the argument, and you spend so much time picking over the minutiae of what's been said that you overlook what's meant. So I know that I've mentioned the definitions of these words. I don't want to focus on that too much. The reason that I did it was just so that in the context of this post, it's clear what I mean by know and what I mean by believe. So, back to the subject. I actually think most of us probably understood quite well what the term believer meant in the context that Jesus Freak 777 used in his question, and I think it's fairly safe to assume that if you went and asked him, he would probably turn around and say, I know God is real, I don't just believe that God is real, if we're using the same frame of reference for these two words. Now, even if I take this approach, I definitely think that even as an atheist I could believe in something. I could probably believe in God even if I didn't have 100% watertight proof. What I would need is sufficient evidence to back up any kind of claims that were being made or any kind of explanation, and for those explanations to be more plausible than the alternatives. So I don't think I'd actually need God or some holy manifestation to reveal itself to me in some kind of divine spirit. Really just plausible evidence that all of these claims of the existence of God are in any way feasible, and that those claims make more sense than alternative explanations. And that's really why I said evidence, because that's what I meant. All I want is evidence to back up the claims. The fact is that one of the reasons I'm an atheist is that I don't see this evidence. I don't see any evidence at all. What I do see quite a lot is fairly desperate attempts by people to make the observations fit a theory rather than the other way around. And I think there's a good parallel here between the geocentric model of the universe and intelligent design and creationism. The original geocentric model of the universe was actually tweaked with the addition of little wheels and gears and things nested in these crystal celestial spheres in which the planets were supposed to be embedded. so that it could explain the retrograde motion of the outer planets that was observed through telescopes. And I see a definite similarity here in the creationists coming up with intelligent design so that it fits their creationist point of view. If I've got intelligent design right, and this is a summary, I know, it seems to me to be little more than just a variation of evolution, well, probably more like selective breeding, but basically it's evolution with God tweaking the odd screw bolt here and there, so that makes the big changes that we see in the fossil record, and those changes that scientists would attribute to natural selection. I have a scientific background, and what I know about science is that the majority of scientists take a reductionist approach when they're attempting to draw up theories to explain things. And this actually works quite well, and the simpler an explanation is, then the more likely it is to be on track. I mean, that's borne out time and time again by many theories. The examples that I've just spoken about, you know, the revised model for the celestial crystal spheres and their little wheels and gears and gizmos and things to describe retrograde planetary motion, and intelligent design, they both seem to run counter to this, and they add unnecessary complexity in what I think is just a pretty futile attempt to shore up a crumbling and flawed initial premise. I mean, it isn't just thick people that do this sort of thing. You know, some really intelligent people have fallen into this trap in the past, and they can get really precious about a pet theory in spite of any evidence that might contradict that viewpoint. I mean, a really good example of this, I think, a recent example, is the astronomer, the late great Fred Hoyle, who formulated this idea of a steady state universe in opposition to the Big Bang theory. And he went to great lengths to tweak his steady state theory so that it fit the observation of astronomers, until it reached the point where it just eventually went out of steam, and you know, the Big Bang ticked all the right boxes. Anyway, get back to the original point. In your narrative, you seem to indicate that you would need some kind of rock-solid proof, so that you would know rather than just believe in God. And you said that you think other atheists probably feel the same way. That may be true, but it's not true for me. I'm going to give you a really crappy analogy now, just to back this up. It's not a great example, but it kind of it illustrates the point in a way. When I first got my dog, I made a mistake of leaving the lid off the biscuit tin when she was in the room, and I went out to make a cup of tea. And by the time I got back with my cuppa, she was back in the same position that she'd been in a basket before I left. But the biscuit barrel was empty, apart from, you know, the odd crumb in the bottom and what looked like some doggy drool. Now, I didn't feel I needed to pump out the contents of her stomach to prove that she'd eaten the biscuits. And I didn't really even need to actually have witnessed her eating them. For me, the evidence spoke for itself. It was pretty plausible and consistent with the conclusion that I drew from, you know, empty biscuit barrel when I came back versus full biscuit barrel when I'd left. You know, obviously I can never be 100% certain, but I'm still fairly happy to accept that my conclusion was spot on and she was the culprit. So in a similar way, although I consider myself an atheist because I truly lack a belief in deities, and I think that the idea of a God is nonsensical, and everything in my experience shows a complete lack of evidence, of any plausible evidence for me to change my view. I don't necessarily think I would need absolute irrefutable proof. Any evidence that backed up the claims that were being made and was actually more plausible than any of the alternative explanations that have been put forward, I think they probably, if nothing else, they'd make me think again, even if it didn't make me a believer. So anyway, that's why I'd answered the question the way that I did, saying that I would need evidence rather than proof. There's a really, really great Richard Dawkins quote that I love, and he said we should be open-minded, but not so open-minded that our brains fall out. So that's kind of my approach to this. They can get a bit uncomfortable up here on the fence, sitting on the fence. But at least you get an interesting view. So anyway, there you are. That's my contribution to your post. So thanks again for putting up your video post and giving me a chance to get my grey matter working. And take care.